Welcome back to 110 Daily on the 110 Sports Network. Josh Doring, Chris Brown. It was a packed weekend in the sports world. Not just in football, there was basketball being played as well. There were winners and there were losers. There were no participation trophies given out, so therefore we can do a winners and losers segment here on a Monday. We'll start with our winners. Josh, who's your winner?
My winner, Andrew Jones and Texas.
It's a good one.
Mhm.
It's just an awesome story that he had another good game and obviously hit the 3-pointer to cap off the comeback at West Virginia exactly 3 years after his, the same day as his cancer diagnosis, the anniversary. The story's been chronicled. He's been playing. It's not like this is new, but that was just a very fitting thing and an awesome moment for him. The other part of this I also wanted to mention, though, that was almost my bigger takeaway. That game right there is why I buy into this Texas team and why this Texas team is different than last season's team. Last season's team was about as talented. They weren't tough. They didn't know how to win. They weren't all that experienced. They didn't have this edge that this team does. That you can go pull out a game in which a team that can't score drops 40 on you in the first half. They're shooting the ball well. Their bench is scoring left and right. It all went wrong. Texas was not shooting the ball well, and yet they still found a way. They dug in defensively and put themselves in a position to have that final shot. The game was in their hands. Courtney Ramey makes the pass. Andrew Jones hits the shot. It just said a lot about this Texas team. I thought it was all very fitting. That is a team that understands how to win. They're more mature. This is why experience matters in college basketball and why being old pays off.
Yeah, there's a real confidence from that team that they belong in those games, that they can make the big plays. There's a belief in themselves that, right, that they're not going to cave under that pressure. They know they know that they're capable of winning that game. They know that even when things aren't going well in a lot of different aspects, that they can still find a way to win those kind of games, and that's a huge difference. Like you said, I'm with you between teams, their teams of old and now. There's just that factor of they believe they can compete in those games.
Chris, your winner.
I want to give some credit to Kentucky basketball. It was a big weekend for the
Fair.
Wildcats, and look, I gave them a lot of criticism. I mean, obviously, it was a lot of criticism a few weeks ago, not just because, of course, their horrible, historically bad start that they were off to, but also just a lot of the off the court things, behaviors, lack of accountability. I gave them a lot of criticism for that a few weeks back, and I want to give them some credit now for a big weekend. I'm not declaring them an NCAA tournament team. I'm not saying that they've figured it out. They're perfect. They're 100%. But there are a few things. First off, the team has now won 3 games in a row without Terrence Clark, including a win on Saturday against Florida, uh, 76-58, pretty convincing. And it was their best game of the season. And I watched some of that game, and I read about that game, and they didn't really look anything like the team that had existed for the first 5 weeks of that season. Keon Brooks was back for them, their sophomore forward, and he provided a big boost: 12.6 rebounds, 4 assists. They, led by as many as 25 points in the second half in that game. It was a pretty convincing victory for them. In the last couple of games, in the last 3 games, they're shooting 47% from beyond the arc. Their free throw shooting is better. They're they've increased the amount of blocks that they're getting by 4 a game. They're averaging nearly 9 steals a game. All these things are improving for them. It seems like this is a team that is in the right mindset now in terms of starting fresh in January and trying to just flip the script. They can't fix the past, but they seem to be in the right mindset now. Now they also have Oscar Shibwe committing to them yesterday. Of course, he's not going to be there this year, but that's another big winner for them, their program long term, him coming from West Virginia. So another big test for them tomorrow night against an Alabama team that's won 5 straight. I'm not declaring Kentucky an NCAA tournament team, but I want to give them credit for what they have done in the month of January.
Shouts to Kentucky, and it doesn't. It truly doesn't seem to matter how bad things get in the early season for Kentucky. And like you said, it's not like they look like one of the 12 best teams in the country all of a sudden. But it doesn't seem to matter how horrible things look for Kentucky basketball in the when you get to SEC play, right, they're 4-6. It hasn't been pretty at all, but they're 3-0 with 2 road wins in SEC play. It just doesn't seem to matter. Maybe just everybody is terrified of Kentucky in the SEC. I mean, that would be fair. It might just be like a block in their brains. Like, we can't beat Kentucky. It's Kentucky. But they always seem to find a way to get it done. And also, Florida losing at home by 20 to Kentucky is also not a good look. But they always seem to get it figured out. Real quick,
yeah, Josh.
My winner's Harris English. Harris English won the Century Tournament of Champions. This is also, I'm just excited to talk about golf again. But Harris he's had a weird career, but he's also been really good the last basically year or so. But he had come really close several times to getting a win over the last 14 months or so since the beginning of the 2019-20 wraparound season. Had a T3, a T6, a T4, and a T5 at the back end of 2019, and just top 20 finishes all over the place pretty much all of 2020, and then the trend continued into 2021. He was 4th at the US Open, 10th at the CJ Cup in the middle of October, a tied 6th and a tied 5th at the end of November and at the beginning of December. Won the QBE shootout, which is which I believe is an alternate shot. Yeah, he shot 58, 61, and 60. So with his partners, it's a partnered event. And then goes and wins the Century Tournament of Champions, 65, 67, 66, 69. He was basically a wire-to-wire winner, and to see him actually get back into the winner circle was good for him. In a PGA Tour sanctioned event, the QBE shootout is an unofficial event, but he getting that win, so good for him. Real quick, Josh, who's your loser?
My loser, RB Leipzig. I want to set the scene a little bit here.
Oh, please do. I got a drink. I got some popcorn. I'm excited.
So, perennial power in Germany, Bayern Munich.
Yep.
Conceded the first goal to the other team in 9 consecutive Bundesliga games. They did not lose a single one of them.
Did they draw any of them? Did they win all of them?
Yeah.
Okay.
They won a majority, but they did. So they dropped some points, which is why Leipzig's still hanging around and very much in this title race.
Gotcha.
Bayern scores the first goal this weekend and then scores again. They're up 2-0 against a Borussia Mönchengladbach team that was awful in the month of December. Mm-hmm. Chris knows from reading my sad stories about them every week in the top 25. And then Bayern concedes 3 goals and actually loses in the one game where they actually score first, giving Leipzig an opportunity to take control of the Bundesliga. And then they don't do anything on offense, and it's a fine loss to Borussia Dortmund because Borussia Dortmund's every bit as good as Leipzig, or at least on that same level, especially with Erling Haaland. But they got ripped apart in the second half, and they lost after the bizarre statistics and sort of just weird world that Bayern are living in. They actually lose, and Leipzig can't even gain a point off of it. They're my losers. Bayern's going to win the Bundesliga again.
Well, death, taxes, and Bayern win in the Bundesliga, right?
Yeah, no change there, huh?
Chris, who's your loser?
Rutgers basketball. This is a team that has been one of the better feel-good stories of college basketball over the last 12, 14 months or so. They weren't a national contender last year by any means or anything like that, but they were clearly on their way to their first NCAA tournament in 3 decades. And then, of course, no NCAA tournament. That energy, though, carried over into this season, and they started 7-1. Their only loss was coming at Ohio State, and they were into the top 25 comfortably. But since then, they've gone 0-3. They lost against Iowa, but it was only by 2. They lost by a ton at Michigan State. Okay. And then on Saturday, though, it got more ugly. They lost at home to Ohio State, a team that was without CJ Walker. They've got some defensive issues that are becoming a trend. As of after that Ohio State game over the weekend, they were 10th in the Big Ten in defensive efficiency. In conference play, they've been out-rebounded by double digits in 3 of their last 5 games. Ron Harper Jr. hasn't been the same since he returned from an ankle injury. They've got some other players who aren't 100% healthy. It's clear that this is a good Rutgers team, and I'm not, panicking about them, all of a sudden going from, oh, they're really good, and now I'm flipping it. But it's clear that they need to be healthy when they're not at 100%. They're just not able to beat a lot of the Big East, the Big Ten teams right now. And they've got their next 4 games versus Wisconsin, at Indiana, and versus Michigan State, and at Northwestern. If they go 1-3 or 0-4 in that stretch, all of a sudden they're not just this lock to make the NCAA tournament anymore. That conversation starts to become a real conversation. So, I'm not. It's not that they're in some horrible position, or I think that they're a horrible program or disgrace, or forget them. But you have to know that, like, they got off to this great start, and they got to fix some things. They got to get healthier. They got to be better defensively. Otherwise, it could start to snowball in a bad direction for them.
And they got to defend the rack.
Yeah.
That Iowa game was a tough loss. They played well. They played hard.
Yeah.
It just, Iowa made plays. That'll happen.
Right.
To let Ohio State walk in there and manhandle you. Yeah, you mentioned Ron Harper Jr. He's not playing very well right now. And they couldn't score points to save their lives against Michigan State. And this is the reality of the Big Ten. You're going to have stretches like this, but you got to find a way to make sure it doesn't spiral out of control. And that's where they are now.
Well, let's talk about another Big Ten team, shall we? My loser's the Fighting Illini of Illinois.
Mm-hmm.
This is exactly why I didn't pick Illinois to win the Big Ten. And to be fair, this is exactly why I picked Wisconsin to win the Big Ten, and they lost this game too, a home loss to Maryland. Now, they've both done this. But you got to win your home games against unranked teams in Big Ten play if you want to win the Big Ten. This is why we've talked about this with Michigan. At least Josh and I have on our podcast that yes, Michigan is 5-0, and yes, they haven't played a ranked team in conference play yet. That's not a lie. That's a lie. I mean, Northwestern and Minnesota will probably end up at a point where they're not top 25 teams, but they haven't had the tough parts of their schedule yet. Wisconsin, they play tomorrow, and that's really the rude awakening to the Big Ten, so to speak. But they keep winning the games they're supposed to win, right? And ask Wisconsin, now ask Illinois. It's not easy to do that. And if you're going to win this conference, if you're Illinois, if you're going to share this conference, whatever, you got to beat Maryland at home, especially when a team like Wisconsin gives you a chance to gain half a game, to gain a game up on them, because they also lost at home to Maryland. Then there's a very obvious place for you to get a game back on Wisconsin in this hypothetical trying to beat them or at least share a Big Ten regular season title with them. As for the team in particular and what's happening on the floor, I'm almost to the point where I don't have any faith in anybody on the Illinois roster in close games not named Kofi Cockburn or Ayo Dosunmu. I just don't. Mm-hmm. Guys not named Cockburn or Dosunmu scored a total of 19 points in this game.
Oof.
Adam Miller was 3 of 5 from the three-point line for 9 points. DeMonte Williams didn't have a field goal. Trent Frazier didn't have a field goal. Those are 2 starters, by the way. You got a total of 5 field goals off your bench, and 4 of them came from Andre Curbelo, the freshman backup point guard. 5 of 15 from the three-point line. It's in big games, I don't know if they can go anywhere else other than Cockburn and Dosunmu, and they combined for 44 points. Like, that's a respectable performance. Dosunmu wasn't great from an efficiency perspective, but Cockburn 21 and 10 on 8 of 10 shooting. You can't ask for a better performance from Kofi Cockburn there. It's just not fair to expect anything more than that. And you still lose at home to Maryland. You just needed anybody else to be like okay. And you had 4 guys, 4 of the 8 guys to take the floor for you in this game, 9 guys, not score a field goal, nor a point. And that just can't happen, because then you'll start to lose home games against Maryland, and you're not going to have a chance against good teams on the road or at home for that matter. So they're my loser, and one of those teams that I feel have felt validated in multiple situations as to not picking them to win the Big Ten, because I had questions about their ability to always win the games that they were supposed to win. Like I said, Wisconsin has had a hiccup in this column as well, but I thought this might come at some point from Illinois. It has, and there's some things inside the lines, so to speak, that give me some worry.
Yeah, your ceiling and your ability to be consistent in that conference are very well limited when you are not multidimensional enough, when you can't count on somebody stepping up to be that third or fourth scorer for you in a given game. Then those kind of things are going to happen. It's certainly cause for some not real huge concern, but cause for concern as far as their ceiling.
And Josh, we've seen this. When DeSuma's not good at end of games, and I didn't watch all of this game, but if DeSuma's not good at the end of games, then you don't have anywhere else to go. And that,
and he hasn't been as good as I thought he would be in those
Sure.
situations this year.
Sure. And if he's going to go 9 of 23 for 23 points and nobody else is going to score, then that's just not good enough. Coming up next, we'll talk college football national championship. Alabama, Ohio State. In a crazy year, we get Ohio State and Alabama in the national championship game. Who would have thought? We'll do that next. You're watching 110 Daily on the 110 Sports Network.